Yes, the Universal Periodic Review process is designed in such a way that there are two parts to the reports. One is an official report, country report that the government, in our case, it's the Ministry of Justice and Labor Matters that handles that report. We as civil society, of course, also has a room to make inputs into that report. But there is also another window where churches, civil society, other non-state actors could submit what they call shadow or complementary reports. There are sometimes issues that government is not comfortable with or that we don't agree with, and we could include those issues in our report. This is the second time we are participating in this process. We first participated in 2021. It was during the time of COVID. All of it was done virtually. So November last year, we submitted our shadow report, and we are now invited to a pre-session by the United Nations Human Rights Council and the UBR Info to present our shadow report, and we had a good session. There are a number of countries from the region, Mozambique, Sierra Leone, and others were also up for review, and Paraguay and Denmark and others from other places in the world.
What are the most pressing human rights concerns the delegation was highlighting in Geneva for this cycle?
Our view in our report and even in our previous report was that in terms of political rights, political civic rights, Namibia is really doing well. In terms of issues around elections, the separation of powers between the three branches of government, the freedom of press, association, the rights in the Bill of Rights in Chapter 3 of our Constitution, we are relatively doing well there. And the good thing about those rights is also that because it's protected within the Constitution, you could take government to task. So we didn't so much focus on those rights. Our main focus was on the social and economic rights, where we are really not doing well. So our report highlighted, first part was issues around strengthening the institutions, the democratic institutions, to protect the social and economic rights. We raised issues around the Ombudsman's office, that the Ombudsman bill is still not finalized, that we don't really have a human rights commission as expected by the United Nations, but we have mandated the Ombuds office to play that role, but they are not legally mandated. And the new Ombudsman bill that was tabled but later withdrawn in Parliament gives that power. We also raised the issue that we would have loved to have the social economic rights also having the same status as the political rights in Chapter 3. And therefore, we have been advocating for many years now for a constitutional amendment to make sure that the economic rights are also included and protected in the Constitution. We've also raised issues around issues of land reform, the call for implementation of the second land conference resolutions. We've raised issues around poverty and inequality, calling for implementation of a basic income grant. We've also raised issues around housing, commended government for the new housing policy, very progressive, pro-poor, also budget that has been increased from 50 million to 700 million. We've commended government for that, and we've said those funding levels must be kept, and implementation of the housing policy must be a priority on top of priorities. We've also raised issues around the marginalized communities, or sometimes they're called indigenous minorities. The Office of the Prime Minister for the past 10 years have been working on a white paper to sort of highlight issues of concern with these communities, and we've called for this paper to be finalized as a matter of urgency, and for the issues, the obstacles that really prevents these citizens from enjoying their full rights as citizens, that those issues are addressed. The mechanisms under the Vice President's office, for example, for the marginalized communities and so on, those are not sufficient. Those communities still are deprived of the basic fundamental human rights, especially socioeconomic rights. And we are hoping that with this white paper, once it's published, will really help us to address those. So those were some of the issues that we mentioned in our report.
What specific advocacy plans has the CCN and DFS, the ELCRN, developed to ensure the Namibian government implements the UN's final recommendations over the next 4 years?
Yes, as I said, we've participated in 2021, and after the reports, government submitted also its reports, and the UN Human Rights Council provided recommendations. Government accepted most of those recommendations. There were a few that were just noted. We had a session with the Ministry of Justice, also the former Minister of Justice participated in that to see what are the priority issues in terms of those recommendations that came. So the past 3-4 years, we've been focusing on selecting a number of issues and focusing on those ones. Housing, for example, was a priority for us because we believe that the housing crisis is in our hands. We can solve it. We don't need foreign aid. We don't need help from us. We can, within a reasonable period, we can solve it. In 2018, at the Second Land Conference, we said in 7 years' time, we want to do away with the informal settlements. We want to upgrade them, and we want to make sure that the backlog of 300,000 housing units that we had, that we catch up with that. If we look at from 2018 up to now, our performance is dismal. It's going very, very slow. We have, for example, prioritized that. Land reform is another issue we have prioritized. So we have continued to engage the authorities on those issues. Poverty and inequality is a big concern. We have had interventions. Our flagship demand has remained the implementation of the basic income grant because neither government, development part, and anyone else has not come up with a better solution to immediately address the challenges that we have in terms of resolving the issues around poverty and inequality. So once government is now going to present the official report in May, and after that, before the end of the year, maybe around October, the Human Rights Council will now provide new recommendations to Namibia for the next 3-4 years. We will do the same process. Once those recommendations are out, sit down and do an advocacy plan prioritizing those issues, because we don't have the capacity to work on all those issues, but prioritize those issues, mobilize resources, and see how we can collaborate with the different ministries and agencies to achieve those recommendations.
Based on your recent workshops, what is your assessment of the government's progress on the resolutions from the Second National Land Conference?
Yeah, it's myself as someone that has been involved in this process from the preparations of the Second Land Conference, the delivery of the conference, also having had the privilege to be appointed on the Ancestral Land Commission by the late President Kengop, having delivered that report in June 2020, I'm really disappointed by the progress that we have made. We've had a high-level committee that meets on a quarterly basis to review progress, but from those meetings, it's very clear that we are moving very slowly. So we have engaged already with the current Prime Minister to say these issues, resolutions of the Second Land Conference is a priority on top of priorities for us. We are hoping that the land bill will be dealt with by Parliament in the current session, we've asked for a space that the bill be referred to a standing committee so that we can give our inputs, because there are a number of concerns that we have on that bill. The most outstanding achievement for us in terms of government performance has been around the housing policy. The policy is very progressive. The budget increase from 50 million to 700 million is commendable. We just now have to make sure that that 700 million goes to what the policy is prioritizing, the low and the ultra low income. Majority of it goes there, and that we don't have a situation like in the mass housing program where this was eaten up by the tenderpreneurs, and until now there are some houses that stands unoccupied, and the program was not that successful. So we are putting up monitoring mechanisms, working with the ministries and agencies that are concerned. We are also going to request an audience with the task force that has been appointed by the president to accelerate the delivery of housing and so on, to just make sure that the gains that we have made so far are going to be consolidated, and that we really solve this shameful phenomenon of homelessness in Namibia.
Given your long-term advocacy for basic income grant, how is this being framed as a necessary tool for poverty eradication in the Geneva presentations that took place? Yes,
the basic income has really become a very popular intervention in the development sector all over the world. There are more than 1,000 pilot schemes that are going around all over the country, both in the so-called least developed countries, but also in countries in the so-called global north. They even have, like countries like Finland also have pilot programs. I mean, just a few years ago, Switzerland, country with one of the least income inequalities, they had a referendum whether to have a basic income grant or not in Switzerland. The campaigners of the basic income grant narrowly missed that opportunity to have a basic income grant rolled out. We have piloted this in one of the Namibian villages. This pilot has become a reference point globally in terms of basic income initiatives, and the results from it is convincing. It's well documented, and therefore we are convinced that if government implements a basic income grant in Namibia, most of the most challenging development challenges, hunger, unemployment, and so on, would be addressed. We have even made proposals to government to say, we understand government might not have the resources to immediately roll out a universal basic income grant. So we have said, let's do it gradually. Let's start, say, with a children's grant, universal children's grant. Let's then expand to the youth, and gradually we can do that. Countries like Brazil has done that. There's a law, a universal basic income grant law in Brazil, but they are busy implementing it gradually. And this is what we have advocated to do in Namibia. So we have accelerated again the campaign for a basic income grant, and towards the end of the year we'll also have massive public action campaigns to convince our policymakers that this is one of the most viable interventions to address poverty and inequality in Namibia.
How will the recently launched Ecumenical Youth Forum empower young Namibians to participate in human rights monitoring and climate action?
Yeah, we have finalized the preparations. We have not done the official launch yet. In mid-April this year, we are expecting about 150 to 200 youth from all over the country to gather in Windhoek to launch the Ecumenical Youth Forum. Social economic justice advocacy with a human rights perspective is going to be one of the cornerstones, the main focus of this forum in terms of the discussions that the youth had in the preparatory, the two forums that we had so far. So we are looking forward to a platform where young people within the faith-based sector would come together and identify these priority issues and campaign, starting with getting their churches involved, putting these issues on the priority agenda of the churches. Because mind you, youth are not only the majority in the country. In every institution, including in the churches, they are the majority. And their voice needs to count, and the churches needs to respond to the urgent needs that are facing their young people. So they would be organizing youth within their churches, but also expanding it to at a societal level, joining forces with other non-secular youth, and we're really looking forward to a well organized and established social movement of young people for social justice. So we are very excited about the upcoming launch of the Ecumenical Youth Forum and what it can do after the launch.
How does the partnership with the Lutheran World Federation amplify the voices of grassroots Namibian communities on the global stage in Geneva?
Yeah, we are really fortunate that we are associated and that we are affiliated to the Lutheran World Federation. I mean, Lutheran World Federation has a history of support to social economic justice and human rights in Namibia. They have been supporting through the churches the independent struggle for Namibia, and even after independence through various programs to the Lutheran churches that are here in Namibia. They have been supporting through processes like UBR, because Lutheran World Federation is accredited to the United Nations. We can make use of those platforms to gain access and to address the UN Human Rights Council and so on. Like last year, we were in Kenya, where the UN was debating the United Nations legally binding convention on tax, which is going to be another major intervention if it's successful. And we had used the platform of the Lutheran World Federation. Also, whilst in Geneva, we have had engagements with the World Council of Churches, because we are also serving on commissions of the World Council of Churches dealing with issues of social economic justice and climate emergency and so on. So these global ecumenical bodies really give us access to global platforms where we can raise local issues, but also the issues that are agreed at those global platforms, we can bring it back and push our government here locally to consider and act on those recommendations that are made. So these global ecumenical forums are an important platform for us to link the local struggles to the global level, and then also to bring the global struggles to the local level.
Mr. Uhuru, any final remarks?
Just to say to churches and Namibian civil society that we are continuing to accelerate our advocacy campaigns. As I said, the land bill is before Parliament. We have prepared inputs and will be providing those inputs. On the 2nd of March, we'll have a one-day workshop on the universal health coverage bill, inviting all churches and civil society to be part of that. The Ombudsman bill, when it comes to Parliament, will provide inputs. We have created some capacity to monitor Parliament, and when there are bills that are in the interest of citizens that don't have that voice and access, we are able to collect those inputs and provide, from a human rights perspective, inputs into those processes. So we're just urging churches and civil society to organize themselves locally. Sometimes we don't have resources to go to all the regions all the time, but if they are organized there, we could link up and provide them the information and get their inputs, and also represent them at the platforms at Parliament and the global platforms that we talked about. So just encouraging citizens, young people, to organize themselves at church platforms and other platforms, become active and become the changes that we want to see in society.